Hey, Brad, how's it going?
Hey,
Is part of the plan to convert, whether it's Drew Peterson or J.D. Davison, from a two-way to a standard contract, and if so, which player, or both?
we have 13 guys right now. We'll probably do something with a 14th relatively soon, and then we'll take our time with the 15th and really assess our health and needs and those type of things as we go on. And won't get into any particular players. I think all of our guys have done a great job. It will be more based on the needs of the Celtics.
And then secondly, were there any conversations with ownership about trimming payroll and saving money before the deadline passed, or was this strictly an opportunity that presented itself and you guys all thought this was in the franchise best interest?
I think as you go through a season and you build a roster, you try to determine, what's best for your organization, what's best for your team. The number one North Star of our team right now is to try our best to have a chance to win again. Obviously when we make moves, and like we did the other day, that opens a roster spot. So there's an opportunity to fill that. But you're also weighing, how much people are playing, how much opportunity they're really getting, how much opportunity they're probably going to get as you get into the playoffs and those types of things. And hey, I really like Jaden. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's a really good kid, and I'm really rooting for him, and I'll help him in any way I can. And at the same time, we're pretty deep, and so I feel really good about having answers at a lot of different places, and I think the open roster spots will provide some opportunity to have some flexibility as well.
Brad, we're now into the second apron era. How has this deadline been any different for you? And what things have you noticed around the league that might be new that hadn't happened under the previous collective bargaining agreement?
Yeah, I think there's several teams that ducked under the tax. A couple that ducked under the second apron. Obviously we were enough over the second apron that we would have had to really either dig all the way into our minimum depth or send a player that makes a lot more, and we're trying to win, and so ultimately the decisions that you make at this time are influenced by all of those factors, but your North Star right now is to make sure that you're doing everything you can to put this team in position. The second apron penalties kick in at an even greater level this year, and they kick in at an even greater level next year, right? And so we know that. We've done the math on that. We've looked at it over and over. We've tried to really take advantage of these first couple of years from a spending standpoint and signing extensions and making sure that we're trying to maximize this window as well as we can. And then you just got to weigh, some of the basketball penalties are going to be pretty significant. But you got to weigh that over your roster, your opportunity to win, and all of those things. And we're lucky that we've got we've got people that have really invested in this group, and we've been given the resources in this window to continue to pursue this thing.
Your job obviously is to look short, medium, long term, all kind of at the same time. Has this changed how you do that? You're talking about this year? Do you kind of put off some of the long term stuff because of the second apron stuff?
No,
how has that changed what you do?
I think you have to, you have to be cognizant of your opportunities in this right now, right? We can't miss this moment. We have a good team. I don't know if we'll end up being the last team standing or not, but we at least can be in the mix. We're at least one of the teams that's probably in the mix. Like I've said before, we could get beat in the first round, or we could be standing at the end. Who knows? But that's how good the competition is. But we are in good shape. And then, just like everything else, every decision comes down to how good can you be, how manageable is it all, from the standpoint of both finances and from the standpoint of the aprons and the penalties and everything else that comes into it. And then what kind of window do you have? And can you? Sometimes it's about, maybe you have to take a small step back in the moment, but you extend your window by 10 years. or 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is. You can't probably extend anything by 10 in this climate. But I do think, like, generally our goals have been to try to do our best to be the best team and be the last team standing while also being sustainable and giving ourselves a chance to be in the mix at some level every year.
Brad, you touched on it a little bit there, but Jaden had some, I'd say, positive performances over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How do you weigh upside and potential against kind of all these other considerations?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a really good question. I mean, when we got Jaden last year, you kind of think about the things that you saw last week and, that we've seen before, both behind closed doors and, under the bright lights with him. But one of the things when we got him was we didn't have Holiday signed to an extension. We didn't have White signed to an extension. We didn't have Hauser signed to an extension. So now you're also playing hey, if you don't have this, you also have a young player that maybe you could go forward with. When all those things happen and it becomes less in your rotation, he's a really capable player and he can probably play really well in a rotation in the NBA, but also he's not going to play in this particular circumstance, and we have very limited opportunity to sign him after that, right? And so those are all factors that you have to consider, and it stinks for that we have to do that with regard to him, but he'll be okay because he's a Bulldog. He's a good player.
Brad, I know you guys had obviously significant limitations in terms of what you could do at the trade deadline today, but what was it like for you guys in terms of were asking prices high for guys you might have been looking at, or is it more of a thing maybe the buyout market provided better options to fill those final roster spots? How did that kind of go for you guys this week?
Well, I think the one thing about this, and I think I've learned it more, being on this side of it and not being in coaching, right, is you're talking to people all year long. So you have a pretty good idea of what you're looking to do. You have a pretty good idea of what others are looking to do. Maybe you're surprised by something, but whatever the case may be, it's like generally you usually have a pretty good idea. In our situation with our team this year, today was boring as hell. Like it was just like, no, there's not, like there wasn't going to be anything going, and it was very, the phones didn't ring. We had already had any discussions that we were probably going to have, and we just weren't going to do anything major because at the end of the day, even through our ups and downs over the last 6 weeks, like what gives us our best chance of having a chance to win? And that is this group playing a little bit more like itself more of the time, and I'm encouraged by kind of where we're headed with that, and never really wavered in our belief in that, but, ride the ups and downs like the rest of the fans and everybody else sometimes.
And are you guys? I'm sorry. Are you looking for anything positionally on the buyout market in general, or to fill?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we'll look to do is bring in a wing.
Okay, Brad, being in the second apron, and you can't do much in the second apron. I mean, it's so limiting. Have you tried to find ways, not to circumvent, but to figure out ways to improve the team, knowing that you're just so limited? Or you kind of said it's getting to the point of boredom because you can't do anything?
It's probably not the right way to put it, but for me, to say that boredom. I think, Gary, the one thing that we knew kicked in this year with the second apron teams, not last year, was the inability to aggregate. We knew that. Right, we knew it last year that it wasn't going to kick in until this year, and it was helpful. And I think that's just the way people have to. You have to think about you've got a really good team. You don't want to cut into your depth too much, and we're in this window where we're really willing and been willing to put all of our resources towards trying to be as good as we can be. And you're weighing that against your pick being frozen for 1 year or 2 years, right? And you just have to weigh that. It's just like any other cost benefit. So, and then every year or every couple of years, you've really got to just have a plan of how you want to go about it based on where your team is, how your team's doing, what it looks like, what your short-term and long-term outlook is, all that stuff. But there's a lot. Yeah, you certainly feel limited, but I didn't really care as much at this trade deadline because we were planning on limiting ourselves because we like our team.
And should the players in that locker room view this as a reinforcement that they're championship worthy? Like there's no major changes. There's no, like the roster in there is good enough.
Absolutely. Listen, I think we need to, just like I said earlier, we haven't been perfect, and we can get beat by anyone. But I think when we play really well, we can beat anybody. So the question is will we build the habits necessary, like any other season, to start to peak at the right time and give ourselves a chance? This team's capable of that. But so is a lot of our competition, and so I don't want to take away from that.
Just looking at the last couple months, obviously you guys got off to the great start, had, like you said, an up and down 6 or 8 weeks, but all the underlying numbers were still super strong. Like as you've
They
watched,
were buoyed by some blowouts.
sure, but as you have looked at it, like what are the things that have, what kind of stood out to you as the reasons that were causing that, and what have you seen change lately?
Tim, I don't know that I would have an exact reason. I don't get too caught up in the numbers of that stretch because, we lost some close games that maybe we felt like we could have won, or we made mistakes or at the end and lost. And then our numbers were probably buoyed by a couple of those 30, 40-point wins. And so we probably weren't playing as good as our numbers at that time, but we're capable. And we're capable on both ends of the court. Listen, it's a long year. We have played late, and we hope to play late. We know that nothing's given, but the reality is we also know there's going to be ups and downs, and we can't ride those. And we just have to, okay, we're not playing as well. How do we fix it? What do we need to do different? And I think all of our answers we can do internally.
And are you
We're in
getting
good
any
shape.
kind of updates? Sorry, are you getting any kind of updates as things go along, as far as the sale process goes, with where it's at and how it's going, and do you expect to? As it goes along?
Very minor updates for me. I haven't been involved in that at all.
Before the season, I'm paraphrasing, but you said that sometimes bringing the entire same team back, like maybe you want like an infusion of a new person, that sort of thing. Now, 51 games in, do you feel like you kind of survived that period of like wondering if you needed a new person, or do you feel like you could still benefit from just having like a new voice, new player in the locker room?
Yeah, I think there's potential benefit to that. There's always potential harm, right? You take some risks in that too, but I think anytime anybody that's in that locker room just has to understand, and that's on our team now or that joins our team, that this is about winning as a team. This is about doing everything that we can to represent Boston and the Celtics and each other, and and be a great teammate and do all the things necessary to try to give yourself a chance. And so anybody that comes in with that mindset is going to lift the energy in the room. And so I think that there's positives in that, but I don't want to take away from guys that aren't here too, because they've been amazing too. We're just really lucky, as Tim said. And I don't want to ever get into like the excuse game at all. I mean, we have to play better, and there's several reasons why we probably haven't. But we believe in this group, and if we bring somebody in, it's because we believe that they will add to the group. And that doesn't mean they'll play every day, but that they, when called upon, can be ready to go in big moments.
And then just a logistical question. Joe kind of mentions that it's not something he talks about with the guys a lot in the lead up to the deadline, the trade deadline, and rumors and things. Do you have a more active role, like someone like Jaden? Are there conversations before? Yesterday, was it just about kind of where he stands and his name being in rumors and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a really tough deal, right? Because you have to have a great level of confidentiality in this role with people in the building and people on, that you're working across the aisle with, and all of those things. But in this particular circumstance, when, we knew that we were probably going to, there were only a couple of different things to potentially look at, right? And Jaden was clearly that. We gave them a heads up. They knew it was coming. They knew that it was a possibility at least, and wanted to try to be in front of that and active and helpful. But you can't always do that, and that's just the reality of it.
Thanks.
even though this time may have been a little dull for you guys, it was not across the league. It feels like most teams are gearing up to face you guys. What kind of impact does that have on you? And then just how much do you think what's going on around the league is what's causing all of those changes and teams really having a sense of urgency at the deadline?
Well, I don't know if they're gearing up to necessarily face any single team. I just think they're trying to become the best that they can be, and everybody's at a different time in that. And there are some teams that have a few more tools to use that aren't in these aprons, that aren't limited by that. And we saw some of that with some of the additions, where they can take on a little bit more money because they aren't restricted by the rules of being above the second apron. So I do think that there are examples of teams that really got good. There was a lot of movement, or probably improved, and there was a lot of movement. And but you never know until people play together. You never really know until you see it work together, and you can try to predict it as well as you can. And I mean, we're a good example of that. You don't know what Kristaps is going to look like on our team until he gets out there with them. And so I just think that ultimately, it's a competitive league. It's hard. Everybody's trying to put their best foot forward, and it's going to be a great challenge. But this is the fun part. And our guys, as I said, or as Gary insinuated, we believe that this group can do it.
Brad, how much does that ownership process, that going on the back burner now, influence, the way you handle the job right now, or just kind of how you have to approach planning for the future, given that it will be a different ownership group that's going to move forward?
Yeah, again, I just haven't been a part of it up to this point, and I'm sure that I might be at some point, but I'm not right now, and so it's not really in my mind. It's certainly something that we know is coming down the pike, and we'll deal with that as it happens, and look forward to working with whoever we're working with. But right now we're focused on the short and long term of the Boston Celtics. But now that we're through the trade deadline today, it's about the 2025 Boston Celtics.